everybody, I'm Alexey Kraborov, the organizer of SF Scala, and here we're on location at Spotify, one of our favorite music companies, which is actually using Scala and using big data with Scala, such as SIO, which is the interface to Google Cloud. And today we have a couple of talks, and we have Christopher Hunt, who is the tech lead on Lightbend production suite, who is known for the ConductR project and other things, and he resides in Australia, and so this is the first time we are fortunate to have you here, Christopher.
Really nice to be here. Thanks very much for having me talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what brings you to San Francisco, and tell us a little bit of what you do with Scala in Australia.
Okay. Well, what brings me to San Francisco is the opportunity to talk to you. Of course, this is the only reason why I'm here.
Thank you.
No, I come here pretty much maybe once a year at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, that Lightbend is a very distributed company. We
Mm-hmm.
have, I think now, 130 people in 22 countries.
Mm-hmm.
So, not only do we like dealing with distributed systems, but we deal with distributed people.
Right.
So we like just anything distributed, which leads really onto my job, my role, and I'm the tech lead of a product we call the production suite, which is being renamed, in fact, to the enterprise suite. Mm-hmm. And really, it's about how I see this space is developers being dragged, kicking and screaming into the world of production. Production is a dirty word,
Yes.
But their employers, are wanting them to look after what they produce in production, because then, of course, they believe they're going to get higher quality code. And I subscribe to that point of view. I can see why it's happening. But Production Suite is really about supplying a set of technologies that holds the hands of developers as they move into the world of the brave new world of DevOps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found this very fascinating in what you were working on, and had glimpses of that. And there is so many alternatives, right? So I'm wondering, what do you think is kind of the optimal sweet spot for Scala developers?
Yeah.
Right? I think every group of developers have their own character. Mm-hmm. So is there a kind of DevOps setup which is better for Scala developers than for JavaScript developers?
That's a really, really good question. I think I'd like to actually understand your view on this as well, but I think that developers have an affinity for technologies that use the technologies that they love to develop in as well, mm-hmm. right? So, with regards to our reactive platform, if you've already subscribed to the reactive manifesto and its point of view, and to functional programming, and perhaps even to the actor model, through akka, and so forth, and you can keep going on there through our projects, then there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be interested in a set of technologies that leverage those technologies for this particular domain as well. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, it is a bit of a busy domain right now. There are quite a few projects going on, including Kubernetes and Docker Native, which is formerly Docker Swarm, and Mesos Marathon, and so forth. The way I look at that personally is fantastic. This is good for the consumer. Very exciting times, and the reason that there are a number of players in this space is because there's a problem to solve, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. There's not just one player playing in here.
There's a lot.
Exactly, and it's because there really is a problem that needs to be managed here.
It always surprised me that there is no DevOps framework written in Scala, right? We basically have Chef and Puppet, which are in Ruby, and we have SaltStack, which is in Python. Yeah. But we don't have anything in the strongly typed language, right? So basically, we write all this strongly typed, thoroughly crafted code bases, mm-hmm. and then we entrust them to a blob of Ruby to put it in production, right? Do you think isn't there a paradox here? And didn't TypeSafe Lightbend try to thought ever about this? Why do you think we don't have anything fully Scala based for production?
I think that's a bit of a leading question, of course, because that is exactly what we developed, and we three years ago now, thought that we were doing a reasonable job with the Reactive Manifesto and helping developers, nurturing them down this path of creating these beautiful reactive distributed systems, but then leaving them high and dry when it came to managing them in production. Now, of course, the world's changed since then. There weren't a lot of options then, which is why we embarked on that. In fairness, Mesos Marathon is also actually written in Scala as well, so it's not completely true. There is what we have, which through the ConductR project, and also Mesos Marathon. They're the two that I know that have been written in Scala. I do know that some of our customers have also written their own orchestration tools in Scala Play and so forth.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not thinking usually of Mesos on par with Puppet, Chef, and I think of orchestration. But you're right. That's we got Mesos.
That's right, because there are the infrastructure-focused tools such as Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and
provisioning,
so forth.
deployment.
And we are talking about when we come to cluster management, we are talking about a different problem to be solved.
Yes.
It's about managing the life cycle of processes across a cluster.
So you'll give a talk later on the nature of cluster management, but I wonder, how did you get interested in all this stuff, right? And how does it work in Australia, like on the other side of the earth? What does your community look like? Tell us about kind of the Scala scene in Australia.
Well, of course, it's all upside down, naturally, being in another hemisphere, but actually, what happens when you fly here on the airplane, as you go over the equator, the plane does a flip.
That's good.
And everything's fine right now. So everything seems to be in reverse here. So there were a few questions there, in terms of me and my personal involvement and interest in this domain. This, in fact, is the second time I've been involved in such a project. Prior to Lightbend, TypeSafe, I was at VMware and created something similar there as well. So, I'm fortunate in that I've been able to refine the design and hone my knowledge of that space. So I personally think that nothing is real until you put it in production. And I understand that we all enjoy development. I find it personally a very creative, expressive experience, and so that's wonderful. But you really don't start learning about all the nuances of your system until you put it out there in production. And I love that. I find that very interesting. And I would say to developers, don't be afraid of production. It's a wonderful place.
No, absolutely. I can't imagine, being in a startup, you have to be aware of production.
Well,
and you have to have the most efficient way to
absolutely.
control the production.
Indeed.
So maybe, the attitude that is not my problem, it's probably from a bigger corporate kind of setup, right? But I think these people will benefit even better from being hands-on.
And in terms of the Scala scene down under is very strong, in fact. Scala Sydney runs, Scala Syd we call it, runs on a monthly basis. At a minimum, would get 50 people. If there is someone there of interest, you can easily get 100 people. Martin was there actually a couple of months ago, and
that's right.
And we got 300 people within 4 hours of announcing it.
Nice. Wow.
Okay, so that was pretty impressive. So there's a lot of Scala, Play, and so forth being used down under and throughout Asia as well.
So 4 hours is not enough to get from Brisbane and Melbourne. So this was pre-release Sydney.
You do mean Brisbane and Melbourne?
Brisbane, that's right.
I'm just no. But indeed, obviously the tickets were being sold online, and within 4 hours they went.
Okay. So there was a notice. There was ample time for people to get there. Well, 300 is pretty impressive. I think we had about 450 people max when Mark was at the meetup, right? So conferences are bigger, but that's actually it's comparable. But obviously
he suddenly draws a crowd.
Yeah,
you know, he likes
I
to
think
draw
he
Now this actually I must mention as well. Martin, hello Martin. He was on vacation, right? So this is what Martin does on vacation. He does conferences.
That's right. You guys go conferences in exotic places.
Right.
Which brings me to the question. You told me there is actually an app you use to notice when there are sharks in the water. So what does this like sense of danger make it more kind of vibrant community and like living in the city?
Yeah, right. You never know if you're going to be alive tomorrow, kind of.
That's
thing,
right. Like we have earthquakes and you guys have sharks. Is that related?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting. There have been a significant number of shark incidents. There's been an increase. The water is definitely getting warmer.
Oh, that's right. The global warming.
Climate change is for real, for sure.
I first met you in Tokyo, right? So I wonder, is there kind of proximity in that kind of region of the world? Do you find so? How does the community work? Obviously, you can come to San Francisco, New York all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like you can come to a few conferences, but are there any kind of countries next to Australia or like communities you go to more often?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, certainly Japan is very popular. As you saw, Scala Matsuri it's a very popular, very well organized conference. I would recommend to any of your viewers to go. I'm sure you will as well. It's a wonderful place. Japan is a wonderful country. I always equate to Tokyo as being one of those sci-fi cities in a bubble, and it typifies that. But I think it's a wonderful place, wonderful people. So yeah, totally recommend that. Other countries around us that are also very strong in their Scala community is New Zealand comes to mind. The Scala community there is very strong, and they had a Scala Down Under conference a couple of years ago that did very well, and I'm sure there'll be one of those again as well someday. But yeah, there's a lot of Scala going on in Asia. Yeah, including Australia, New Zealand, in that sort of whole Asia Pacific region.
So you mentioned you basically run a distributed team, but let's say hiring people locally, is there a good supply of Scala developers to run Scala business?
I think testament to that is that Lightbend has 5 developer engineers in Australia. So one in Brisbane, one in Melbourne, me near Sydney, one in Canberra. 2 in Melbourne actually, so that's 5, and then 2 in New Zealand. And my colleagues are extremely good. So that Lightbend's policy in terms of hiring, I think, is fantastic, and I think there are more companies now starting to do this, where geography is not a criterion. I mean, it's a consideration. It has to be. There are legal concerns and so forth, right? But we are pretty free to hire from anywhere that we need to. So first and foremost, we find the right person that we feel that would fit within the team and our culture, and of course would have the skills, or indeed the aptitude to evolve that way, and then geography is a secondary concern.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you guys were like one of always operated on the distributed fashion, right? As long as you have eventual consistency.
Yes, there is eventual. Yes, so how eventual consistency works, we're like convergent replicated data types, and every 3 or 4 months, and I think again this is key to our success in being so distributed. Every 3 to 4 months, we all in engineering, we all meet up somewhere on the planet, and it's typically in North America or in Europe, which is where we've had offices in the past. And it sounds grand, and it is nice, and we do go to nice destinations, but it is also essential that we do this. I find personally that after about 2 months, you start having increasingly more disagreements with people, and you need to get together, have that beer, and sort things out. As an ex-colleague, Josh Surette, my good friend Josh, said once, that we get together to learn how to fight. And it's not that we physically fight, right? But we're very strong and passionate about what we do, and you get to have those great conversations every few months, and that is essential to this model for sure.
No, this is great. Yeah, Josh, also like a good friend of our community. So
yes, indeed.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I'll probably wrap up this Q&A with kind of open question, and so we see a lot of changes in software and in business, right? So Lightbend basically positions reactive as its primary offering, right, in various guises and kind of various incarnations, and so it's not emphasizing Scala as much as before, but Scala is still the engine. And so my proposal kind of to Lightbend and community was, we obviously there is a huge business opportunity, and so I think the way to keep kind of the Scala heart of Lightbend beating and healthy is kind of to propagate this business opportunity to more members of the community, right? And kind of do what Lightbend does for the company. I think every project, right, can kind of show the business value of their own project, right? Because it doesn't have to be abstract hobbyist projects. A lot of projects are being put to production use in various companies. So kind of my question as a community organizer to you as a Lightbend engineers, how can we help you guys to keep Scala healthy and growing, right? So even with all the shift in priorities, I think the community's interest is that Lightbend is the powerhouse of Scala. Lightbend sponsors Scala compiler development, right? And so what do you think, so here I'm not asking what Lightbend can do for Scala, but I'm asking what Scala community can do for Lightbend,
right,
to kind of make sure that our shared value of Scala keeps going strong.
Well, my quick answer to that is just to keep doing what you are doing. You're a fabulous ambassador of the community. I thank you for that. And the community, I think, is very strong and very healthy, and I think that's represented quite well by the number of attendees that we get at Scala Days. Scala Days Europe is 1,000 attendees plus, which is a very sizable conference, of course. In terms of our own priorities, etc., nothing has changed actually. Scala is our DNA. Martin, of course, founded us. He's still very active, naturally, within Lightbend, and pretty much all of our engineers are there because of Scala, and our contributions to the Scala compiler, are obviously, the most significant. Are highly significant. I think something like 5 or 6 of the top 10 people that contribute to Scala work for Lightbend. That's
right, it's the kind of the driver of Scala. But is there any, for instance, open source focus where you guys have gaps? Right, so previously, community help with documentation, right, when Dick Wall was kind of the advocate. So are there any gaps you see from the community, for instance, even on the reactive cluster management, right? Is there any, obviously, production is near and dear to every engineer's heart. So it's like, do you see, for instance, any openings for the community to help you with your project?
Yeah, actually, and so what I'm going to announce here tonight is that we're making the enterprise suite freely available. Okay, it's licensed, and thank you. Yeah, and that will obviously feedback improves the product. So please go out there and kick the tires. And we're also reaching out to where people. You'll see us reaching out to. Where people are at as well. So in terms of what we do with Kubernetes and Docker Native and the others, so we do want, a fairly sort of equal capability across these domains. Because it's a very young domain that's still shaping up. There's, in my opinion at least, no clear winner here. So we want to be able to service as much as we can there.
All right, that sounds great. So hopefully, when you guys check out the suites, you kick the tires, you give it a spin, and relay it back to Lightbend to the community.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
No worries. Thanks.